Hello everybody, welcome to the February 12th edition of Locker Room. My name is Ian Metcalf. Now my regular co-host on this show, Steve Erickson, we've given Steve the night off tonight, so we're off to a good start already. Just kidding, Steve. My co-host tonight, Mr. Rick DeBanks. Rick, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me in, and it looks like it's going to be a good show. No offense to Steve.
Of course not. Now tonight's show is going to focus on wrestling and soccer. Second half of the show, we're going to have Paul Dolan Nic Dasovic from the Canada's national soccer team. But off the top, we're going to talk about wrestling, and we've got two gentlemen with us tonight. Mr. Greg Edgelow, the Commonwealth winner at the recent games in Victoria, and forgot his name already. Sean Kaiser from Tamawis Secondary School in Surrey. First to you, Greg, must have been a big thrill winning the gold medal for your home country in front of your home fans.
Definitely it was. I think it was one of the biggest moments of my career to be able to win a gold medal in front of the home crowd, and my family, my wife was there, and it was a great way to cap off my competitive season.
Now, briefly, the road to the games, how many matches did you have to go through to qualify?
The qualifying tournament was the national championships, where I had 4 matches at the national championships, which were in Hamilton last year in May. And they were also the qualifying for the Pan American Games coming up, and some other tournaments in Europe. But those were the only ones.
Now, the games itself, how many matches did you have to go through to win the gold in Victoria?
At the Commonwealth, 3 matches. One against the Indian, and then the next one was against Nigeria, and the final match was against the former Commonwealth Games gold medalist from England.
Now, it's a long road getting there to the level that you're at. How did you become involved in the first place in wrestling? What got you started?
Well, I remember back when I was in grade 8, I grew up in Vernon, and during the 70s, you know, I was a tough kid, I guess, and I remember hearing about wrestling practice after school, and I thought, hey, you know, maybe that'll help me if I ever got in a fight or something like that. Wrestling would come in handy. So I never got into it because I was athletically minded, but I went out to a few practices, and then the season was over, and then in grade 9, I didn't partake in wrestling at all. I broke my hand. I won't tell you how I did it, but
we can guess.
And then in grade 10, I started back at it.
Now, I see you brought your medal, and
Yep.
Maybe we can get one of the cameras to get a close-up of the medal.
Sure, is this one here?
That's
Now, explain to us which one that was.
Which one?
Which you won that one for.
Well, this was the Commonwealth. This was for 100 kilos at the Games in Victoria at the end of August.
Okay, now would that be Greco-Roman or freestyle?
It's freestyle.
And is that what you've been involved with the whole time, or do you alternate, or is there a big difference between the two?
Yeah, the difference is in Greco-Roman, you're not allowed to attack the opponent's legs. You're not supposed to touch them. In freestyle, you can attack any part of the body. And I've mainly only wrestled freestyle. Well, this year in 1994, I was the Greco national champion as well. So I've done a little bit of both.
Yeah. Which do you prefer?
Freestyle.
Freestyle.
Yeah.
More exciting, would you say?
Well, it's just I'm more accustomed to it. I spent more time at it. Greco is, to some fans, maybe not as exciting because there's more stalling involved.
okay. Now, the young wrestler, I'm really having problems with names tonight,
Sean
guys.
Kaiser.
Sean, that's it. Sean, you've been involved with, this is your first year at senior high level?
First year at senior, yes.
Okay.
Third year wrestling.
All right. Now, I understand there was a tournament yesterday. How did you do with that?
Well, I didn't do too good yesterday. I lost my first one, won the second 2. Hurt my back in that match pretty bad, so I placed 6th, so I get to go to the provincials.
Now, the BC High School Provincial Championships are coming up soon?
2 weeks.
Okay, and have you ever been involved at a provincial high school championship before?
Yeah, last year I went to the provincials. I'm wearing the shirt.
Yeah.
And placed 7th.
Oh, it's okay. Now, Greg, there's not a lot of financial rewards in wrestling. What's the incentive to go on after high school?
Well, I had never participated in any other sport. Never played basketball, hockey, or anything like that. And I found that with wrestling, it's an individual sport. Your success is directly related to how much effort and how much time you put in. It has nothing to do with someone else letting you down or letting the team down. So that was one thing that I enjoyed about an individual sport was I found that the harder I worked, the more rewards there were. And I just really enjoyed it, and the best part about it was traveling all over the world. Traveled to about 25 different countries. Some countries don't exist anymore. Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, those type of countries. So I think that was one of the most enjoyable parts of it was the travel.
Now, Sean, do you hope to go on after high school to continue your wrestling career?
I'd like to go on. It's something I enjoy doing.
Okay, just a reminder, this is a phone-in talk show. The number will be appearing at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to give either gentleman, Sean or Greg a call, pardon me, or you can talk to Rick or myself.
Either one of us. We'll field all questions. Greg, Ian and I were talking about this before the show. Wrestling is extremely intense and it requires a lot of endurance. Can you give us an example of what kind of training you go through, like leading up to a match?
Yeah. Well, when we're looking at training before a high-level competition like Olympics, Commonwealth Games, normally what we're doing is in the mornings we're running every morning, running a couple miles, and then on alternative days we're doing a weightlifting program as well. So you're spending about an hour and a half or so in the mornings, maximum 2 hours of doing some sort of weight training or cardio exercises. Then in the afternoons we spend up to 2 hours of wrestling practice, which involves doing scrimmages, technique, and actual matches within the squad.
So there's a huge amount of work involved. Sean, that must be hard for you going to school. How does it affect your social life or your studies?
Well, I gotta find time to do it, but basically we just have our practices after school, and then we're on our own. We'll go weightlift or whatever.
You wrestle in the 100 kilogram weight class?
Yeah,
is it?
100. I've worked my way up from as a senior from the 74 kilo weight class, which is 163 pounds, all the way up to the 100 kilo, which is 220 pounds. Over the past 10 years, I've been on the national team.
Which gives you more difficulty, the smaller guys who are maybe quicker and have greater endurance, or the larger, more powerful guys?
I would say the shorter guys and a little quicker. Because I used to wrestle lighter weight, I put on a lot of weight, and I maintained a lot of my quickness, and so I'm a little quicker than guys who are normally my weight or a little heavier, so that's helped me out.
Now, you wrestled in the Olympics in 1992, I believe. That must have been a real neat experience.
Yeah, that was excellent. It was a lot of fun in the Olympic Village, rubbing shoulders with, the Carl Lewis and Boris Becker, and seeing a lot of the internationally known athletes from all over the world, and eating at the same table as Boris Becker, down in the Olympic Village. That was a lot of fun. That was a great time.
Now we're talking about the incentives to go on, Sean. I guess it would be a real neat experience for you as well if you ever got the opportunity to get to that level. I guess that's one of the things that stays in the back of your mind.
Yeah, it's something it'd be good to do. I'd like to do that. Have to work at it though.
Yeah. Now we were talking about the schooling, and we've got your coach here in the room with us. He works you guys pretty hard.
He works us pretty hard. Yeah, it's tough at practices sometimes.
Now, we were talking earlier about the number of wrestlers and the popularity of wrestling in the Surrey area. Any idea how many schools are involved in the wrestling program in Surrey?
I think there's about 7 schools right now, and there's supposed to be a few more next year. Altogether, there's about 300 or so wrestlers.
Okay, so and now your school, a relatively new program, I believe. I understand it's the first-year program at your school?
For Tomanowos, it's first year, yes.
And how many wrestlers would you have at your school this year?
This year we had about 15.
So that's a good number.
We touched on it earlier, Greg. As far as amateur wrestling is concerned, there's not a lot of maybe promotion or marketing. Or why do you think that is? That once you get beyond a certain level, maybe the interest by the public at large isn't really there. What do you think that's from?
Well, wrestling just traditionally hasn't been a sport that, other than the professional wrestling you see on TV, which is basically theatrics. There's just no, how would I put it, I guess excitement there for the public. They want to see flashy lights, they want to see big name stars, they want to see TV cameras, things like that, and that's what keeps the public, I think, interested in a number of like professional sports. And unfortunately our sport doesn't have that, and that's always been something that I've always wondered, what if I had done something else, like gone and put my time and efforts into a sport that led to professional sport like hockey or football or baseball or something like that, like where would I be now? But I can't dwell on that. I've had a good career and done a lot with my sport, and probably developed a certain characteristics because of it, which will help me to go further in work and stuff like that in the future. So.
With that in mind, where do you see yourself maybe 5-10 years down the road when you're no longer competitive? Are you going to stay involved with the sport, or are you going to move on to other things?
That's a tough question. I definitely would like to stay involved in sports. I'm the intercollegiate event coordinator at Simon Fraser University, and I've been that for a couple of years now, and I was working in the department prior to that as well. So I'd like to continue to stay with sports administration at the university level, perhaps college level, and keep involved with sports because I enjoy it, and I normally enjoy the people involved, and I like the athletes. But I can't predict the future. I'm not sure where my paths will lead.
The Pan American Games are coming up. You have any direct involvement with that?
Well, that's a touchy issue with me. I was on the team, and I had a disagreement with my coach, and he, I feel, unfairly removed me from the team, and at least all my teammates feel that way as well. But as it is now, I'm not on the team, and won't be. So I'll be unfortunately watching my friends on the television down there in Argentina, which I was looking forward to going to.
Okay, we've got our first caller on the phone. Frank, come on in.
Yes, hello, Sean. I'd like to know if you have any plans to join the
Maybe somebody suplexed
WWF, and if so, what...
Frank, are you there?
Hello?
I guess Frank's gone.
Oh, okay. Sean?
Oh.
Go ahead, Frank.
Okay. I'd like to know if you have any plans to join the WWF, and if so, what will be your name?
No, I have no intentions of joining the WWF at all.
No?
No.
Oh, come on. You got them, man. I mean, you're the best. No, you can be...
Well, in case you change your mind, Sean, Ian and I will be happy to manage you.
I don't want to dwell on it, but let's maybe real briefly talk about the WWF. I mean, I don't consider it a sport, but are there a lot of collegiate wrestlers that go on to that type of, we'll call it, entertainment?
Yeah, definitely. I would say there's probably more weightlifters and former football players who get into the WWF than there are wrestlers, because I think that it's almost a mockery of real wrestling. Not to put down weightlifters or football players, but I think that once they're done their careers and they've got the size and the build, and it's a interesting way for them to make money. It's tough at first, apparently, but it's something that I've never really considered. You know, I get that question a lot.
Sure.
Would I go into it? But whenever you start in something like that, even though it's WWF, you start at the bottom. Apparently you travel all over to small high schools everywhere, and it takes a long time to get anywhere and make a lot of money, and very few people do. So it's something that that isn't very entertaining to me.
Now, I know there's a couple of wrestlers that competed up at SFU that went on to play football. Bob Molly and Dan Payne come to mind. Fairly easy adjustment to go to wrestling, football, or back and forth?
Well, I would say that wrestling helps your agility and movement in football. I know that Dan Payne, Bob Molly really felt it benefited their football. In fact, Doug Peterson, who played for SFU and was on the BC Lions team, he was one of the standouts for the BC Lions in the Grey Cup. He also is coming down for the last couple of years to wrestle with Jeff Toohey and ourselves. So I think that it helps them to play football. Football to wrestling, there's not a lot of, if you're a football player coming into wrestling, there's not a lot of skills in football that that really come into play with wrestling. I think it goes the other way. Wrestling can help football.
Okay, we got another call. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, this is Tammy.
How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. I was just wondering how it felt to win the gold medal last year.
Tell us about it, Greg.
How I felt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, unfortunately, I think I cried on TV. I was ecstatic. I couldn't help myself. I remember the first question that was asked after I got off, and I was just completely choked up. I couldn't even talk, like right in here, and it was so amazing because it was the first medal of the night for Canada for wrestling. The Canadian prior to me out there in the final, he had dislocated his ankle, and so it was kind of tough for me to come out there and have to start it. But the feeling was just amazing. And the next day, Victoria was so great, and that evening, because everywhere I went, it seemed like people had seen the match, and everybody on the street recognized you and congratulating you, say great job, you know. So it made the win feel so much better because people cared. They saw you and they congratulated you.
Definitely the highlight of your career
Oh yeah,
thus
definitely.
far.
Oh yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tammy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Sean, we were talking with Greg about football, wrestling. Are you involved in any other sports right now?
No, just basically wrestling, and I play roller hockey, but it's just for fun.
No baseball or soccer?
No.
Or, okay.
Yeah, Sean, we touched on earlier, you hurt your back in your previous match. Maybe both of you can add to this. Are injuries common? What kind of injuries do you usually see? It must be a sport like that, I imagine, competitively would be real tough on your body. What kind of injuries have you guys had?
Well, we'll start with Sean. You wanna?
Well, I've had a knee injury earlier this season at SFU. I let myself get thrown, which was not a good idea, and I wrecked my knee. Still not healed. And just the back injury.
How long is that going to take?
I have no idea yet.
No, right?
No.
How about you, Greg?
Well, I've had numerous injuries I've been up at SFU training for the past 13 years, and I've had dislocated ankle, hyperextended elbow, inflamed neck, twisted back, you name it. You get a lot of them in wrestling because of the type of activity it is. But there's only been a few things that really have kept me out for a prolonged period of time, and nothing's ever kept me out of a major tournament yet. So I've been fairly fortunate with that.
Okay, we've got our next caller on the line. Doug, come on in.
Hello, I get a... Hello?
Hi, Doug.
Yes.
You're on.
Okay, I got a question for Sean there. These injuries you guys are getting, is that a common thing? Is there a lot of injuries?
No, there aren't too many. If you stretch out well enough and you're pretty well ready to go, and you're careful out there, then no, not really, but there is the occasional injury that will occur.
Are the instructors, they teach you the proper stretching? And
Yeah, they show us how to stretch properly. And you had to stretch right before your match and keep limber and warm.
That's the important thing, or the reason why most injuries occur in any sport is because the athlete hasn't prepared themselves properly for their practice or for their competition. And if you don't do that, then the chance of getting injured is increased a lot.
be the same for stretching afterwards, I guess, too, eh?
Definitely.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, this is a audience participation show, and the number should be at the bottom of your screen right now, so feel free to call in and talk to either one of us. Right now we're talking about wrestling. In another few minutes we'll be talking about soccer. Now, you were, Sean, the BC High School Championships are coming up in a couple of weeks. You're looking forward, most definitely, I guess?
Yes, I am. Gonna have to practice a little bit more, and because I placed 7th last time, I expect to do a little bit better this time. So I'll just try that little bit harder.
How many years had you been wrestling when you placed 7th?
I wrestled 2 years, and then I placed 7th. First year in, I didn't go, but last year I did. So.
Alrighty, we got another caller. James, go ahead.
This question for Sean. I was wondering if he had any objections to women in wrestling.
Definitely not. I agree with it, and I have no objections.
Okay, good luck in your next meet.
Thanks.
Interesting question. Are there any women involved in high school wrestling at all right now?
Yes, there are some
every
female
program.
wrestlers.
Okay.
Almost every program that has a wrestling team, I think, from what I've seen, almost has a women's team.
At the collegiate level as well?
No,
Greg?
not at collegiate, but you'll probably see it more, or happening more, because a lot of the high schools, and it's starting to, you're starting to see that in the States as well, are starting to develop women's teams. And the good thing about wrestling for men is that you may not be super tall to play basketball, or super well built and big to play football, or real fast to be on the track team, but you could fit into a certain weight class, and that's the thing about wrestling. And the same thing with women is that it doesn't matter what size you are, that you compete in your own weight class, so basically against people who are very similar to you.
And we were talking about female wrestlers. We've got Janice on the line. Janice, come on in.
Hi. It seems like they answered my question. I was going to ask if there were any female wrestlers and how the interest is with them in the sport. Is it growing? Are people catching on to it? Or is it something that's still very low-key as now?
Greg,
I think that, especially within the programs, they're taking it very serious. The girls I know do, and the people who coach them, and it is picking up. We had our first senior world champion in wrestling this year, a female. She's from Saskatchewan, I think it was. The previous year we had a third and a fifth place, and this last year we had a gold medalist. So within Canada it's picking up, and within the world, a number of teams around the world are very active in it, like United States and France, the Soviet Union, or Russia, Japan.
Thank you.
One of the things that really surprised me about wrestling, recently I was watching the Ultimate Fighting Championship. It's an event that pits people from different arts: karate, kickboxing, boxing, taekwondo. And I've seen this a few times now, and every year wrestlers do extremely well. And that really surprised me. What do you think that is?
Well, one thing about wrestling is that in practice, it's always very close contact, and you're very comfortable with having someone physically handling you on, like, skin to skin, body to body, very close contact. A lot of combative sports don't teach this very close body contact, and sometimes feel very uncomfortable being in that position. And it's the one thing that I always felt. Some people think it's a false sense of security, but I've always felt comfortable with myself wherever I am, because regardless of what skill a person has, as long as I can get in close to somebody, like if someone was in a dark alley or something, to attack me, assuming they didn't have a knife or something, or a gun, I feel very comfortable in close. And I know most people don't feel comfortable with someone really close to them, like in a body lock or from behind with your arms around them. And that's why those guys have been very successful in the Ultimate Challenge.
Would you recommend wrestling as a form of self-defense, maybe?
I think wrestling can be incorporated into any type of, or as an alternative or an extra with anyone who's doing any type of self-defense, because there's some things that you don't learn in other self-defense classes that you learn in wrestling, just like body awareness. And with that, there was a girl in Park Coquitlam, I guess, who was walking on a trail, and some guy grabbed her, and because she was in wrestling, when someone put their arms around her, she just didn't panic like this. She actually knew what to do, and she knew what her body position was, and was able to get away from the guy. A lot of times a girl or a person may just panic, or they may freeze. So I think it'd help everyone.
Now, we were talking earlier, Greg, that you're taking up judo recently.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. It's kind of neat because these guys don't know anything about wrestling, so I actually do a lot of wrestling moves on them. And I've been in one tournament, that was last year, and I won the tournament, first tournament I'd ever gone in. And I did some wrestling moves like double leg takedowns, and people thought they were these new throws I was doing, and the whole crowd just sort of goes, ooh, like that when I do these things. And so that makes it a lot of fun for me, And then I have a few friends who are in the police department who are involved in the wrestling, and it's kind of neat learning a few chokeholds off of them, because judo incorporates not only throws but chokeholds and submission holds.
Now, I've got another caller on the line, I believe. Oh, we don't. Okay. Well, judging by the clock on the wall, guys, it's just about time to wrap things up, and time's just flown by in this half hour, and I want to thank you both for coming on, and you've got something for us.
Yeah, I got something here for Sean. I thought, it's almost like the changing of the guard, and I wanted to give him a little bit of incentive, motivation for the future. When I came out of high school, I didn't know a lot about wrestling, but I wanted to do well, and I've gone far.
Oh, there you go,
So,
Sean.
Excellent.
Thanks.
No problem.
All right. Super. Well, once again, guys, it's been a real delight having you both on, and Greg, good luck in your judo career, and
thank you.
Sean, good luck in the high school championships coming up, and hopefully you'll continue on with your wrestling career.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Coming up after the break, Paul Dolan and Nic Dasovic from Canada's national soccer team, so stay with us. Welcome back to the locker room. Second half hour, we've got two soccer players with us, Paul Dolan from the Vancouver 86ers and Nic Dasovic from the Canadian national soccer team, as well as the CSL champion Montreal Impact. Welcome both.
Hi, how you doing?
Okay, we've got some before we get started with these guys, we've got some tickets to give away.
Yes, we do, Ian. We got 2 tickets to the Comedy Cave to see Herb Dixon, who was incidentally a winner on Ed McMahon's Star Search. But the tickets won't come free. You got to answer tonight's trivia question, and that is, what round was Pavel Bure drafted in? So phone us in with the answer to that. First one gets the tickets.
Remember, you do have to be over the age or 19 and over to get the tickets.
Because they serve alcohol there.
Okay, all right. Now, Paul, you played last year with the 86ers as well as the backup goaltender for Canada's national team. Did you have the opportunity to play in the tournament in Toronto just recently?
No, I didn't play. Actually, Craig Forrest came in for the first game, played against Denmark, and then Pat Onstead played against Portugal in the 1-1 tie.
Now, Nick, you did have the opportunity to play in the tournament. How did it go?
It went really well. First game I didn't start. I came in the second half. And in the second game I got the nod and I played the whole 90 minutes. And apparently it's just due to the fact that a lot of guys are playing in Europe and they're constantly playing, where guys like myself and Paul, we have our APSL seasons that last just 5 months. And then from then on, if you don't get yourself out to Europe, you're basically not playing anywhere. So it's one of the problems we face here.
Now, Canada recently hasn't been doing very well on the international level. We look back at not qualifying for the World Cup, and you talked about the players playing in the CSL, APSL, and going overseas. Is it a problem getting the top players together for these World Cup, Olympic qualifying matches, what have you?
Well, you say Canada hasn't done that well on the international level, and you're right when you look at our standings. I guess, 61 right now? Well, it's difficult because of the problems that you've mentioned in getting the players together, but actually the results over the last few years haven't been that badly. I think we're closing the gap a little bit. To tie Portugal 1 each, for example, is quite a good result. They're in the top 20. The preliminary games before the last World Cup that we played against Germany and Holland and Spain and Brazil, we drew 1 each with the world champions. We're getting high-level games now where it used to be all against the Central American countries or whoever we could get a game against. Now we're playing top-level teams and getting some results. Obviously, it's difficult to get wins all the time, but hopefully that's the next step, and getting the players together might lead to that.
Okay, as far as world soccer is concerned, and Nick, maybe you can answer this one for me. Would you say maybe there's a changing of the guard? Maybe some teams like, say, Honduras, El Salvador, or other teams that weren't traditionally powers are maybe moving up and challenging some of the more traditional powers, Brazil, England, and other European teams?
Actually, in our CONCACAF, in our zone, Honduras was basically one of the powerhouses before, I think. But now, let's say countries like Canada has come on, the States have come on very strongly. Even the country like Jamaica, they're going to come on strong. And you look at the countries in Europe right now, with the newly formed countries. So with so many people playing soccer right now in Europe and the countries, there's not much of a gap between, your World Cup champions and even going down 60, 50 teams down. It's all getting closed in.
How does that experience playing a Brazil in a qualifying or Portugal, how does that help the team develop, do you think? Do you think it makes a big difference, lets them know what's out there, what they need to work on?
I think with us, before the Brazil game, Bob just came in and said, have fun. And,
Yeah.
you know, after result 1-1, we just walked in and, you know, you're happy. You just tied. Basically, we thought they were going to be the World Cup champs at that time. And you just tie a team that's the World Cup champions. And it only boosts your confidence. And basically, the next time you walk out on the field, you don't care who you're playing. It could be Portugal or Spain. You think, we got to beat these guys. And that's the attitude that we need as a country to just to develop. Otherwise, a few years back, it's like, oh God, we're playing, let's say, Germany. Oh God,
Awestruck,
I hope we don't get blown out. But now it's like, let's win the game. So it's been good for the team.
When does qualifying begin for the next World Cup?
I think it's next year, is it? Or the year
Yeah,
after?
it's shortly. Yeah, I mean, it always seems that we're either qualifying or in the World. I mean, we've only been in the World Cup once, but it's always either a World Cup year or preparations for it. So we'll be busy over the next little while. Hopefully, with 3 spots now for CONCACAF, 3 teams qualifying for the '98 World Cup in France. That gives us a much better opportunity.
How would you rate Canada with the U.S.? I remember Canada made it in '86. In the U.S., I think Canada, on a regular basis, got the better of the U.S.,
Yeah,
but
I
they
think-
seem to have come on a bit.
Well, yeah, they've come on and overtaken us, and I think a lot of it has to do with the number of players now. Obviously, they're 10 times the country we are in terms of size and players, and also the money now, especially from the last World Cup that's thrown back into their program, gives them a big head start over us now. So it used to be that Canada always had the upper hand, but I think they've caught us and gone by us just because of those reasons. But you know, having said that, the last couple of times we've played them, we always play them well, and I think the last couple of games were draws.
Another thing I've heard some mention, people wonder if maybe you should bring coaching in from outside or try to develop the program more from within. The States, for example, they brought in a coach, Bora
Milutinovic.
Yeah, and they've had some success with him. Which route do you guys think would be the best?
Well, I think that it's good that finally a Canadian coach is getting the opportunity to teach Canadians. And you know, what I've heard about Bobby is the thing that he feels he's most comfortable with is talking to players who are on the same wavelength as him. You know, you're going to get ideas from coaches from other countries, and I know that's what happened with the States. And sometimes these coaches have more technical background than, say, a North American coach would. But in translating it and the information you want to give to the Canadian players, they don't understand where we're coming from. They don't understand how our lifestyle has been in bringing ourselves up with the game. So I think that's Bob's strong point, is his interaction with the players. You know, there may be other coaches throughout the world who have more international experience and maybe know the game a little bit better, but in terms of relating with players, I think it's important that we have a Canadian coach.
Now, Rick, we do have a winner of the tickets. Alana didn't want to come on the air, so you can't win the tickets, but feel free to call in and talk to Paul or Nick. You guys both have played in the CSL before the APSL. Big difference in the caliber of both leagues?
Well, I think the APSL is a little stronger, but that's not to say that CSL wasn't a good league, and a lot of good Canadian players were developed in that league. The APSL with some of the Americans in it, just as I said before, with the U.S. soccer getting that much stronger, I think that's heightened the level of play. And I think there's a bit more rivalry now too. The teams are a little stronger. You know, it used to be Vancouver and Montreal and maybe Toronto or Hamilton, and then the other smaller cities didn't have as strong a teams. Where now, pretty much all the 7 teams will be strong, I'd think, this year.
Yes.
You know, Nick, you're not, I understand you're a free agent. Any idea if you're going to play in the APSL and where you might play? Are you going to come out and play in Vancouver?
At this point in time, I'm not too sure. I've had an offer by Montreal, and I'm just waiting that out. But if things, you know, if things all go well, I might come back home and play finally for Vancouver. It's, you know, no one knows that I'm from Vancouver. They'll think I'm from either Toronto, Montreal, and it's a funny thing. But we'll see what happens.
Now, how are things looking for the 86ers early on?
Well, we haven't started training or anything like that, but you know, if we get Nick on board, I think we'll win the championship. I think we need some players like Nick. Over the course of the last few years, and in the CSL, we always had strong teams because we had a strong base of players from this area. And over the last few years, that base has obviously gotten older, and some of the players are at the end of their careers, or the younger players, they haven't developed in the CSL or even a reserve team. We haven't had one, so we haven't been as strong. Although, you know, the year before last, we won the league. We didn't win the championship game, but we won the league. A lot of people forget that. And last year, we just had all sorts of troubles getting going, and in the end, I think we finished 2nd or 3rd from the bottom. But I think for this season, if we get a couple of players on board, I heard Jeff Onger might come back. We might need to pick up 1 or 2 players from either abroad or somewhere else besides just the local area. But I think we'll have a good team this year.
Yeah, and I understand your first few games anyway are going to be played at BC Place Stadium while renovations are ongoing at Swangard Stadium?
Yeah, I think it's as many as 5 games on the turf. So hopefully we'll fill the building and
wouldn't that be something?
get some good fan support behind us.
Speaking of the turf, didn't you play for the Whitecaps? Or you had a brief stint with them?
I signed with the Whitecaps, and then the day after that, they folded.
Oh.
That's pretty brief. Yeah. No, I was in the youth system, and then, like I say, the day I signed, I went off with the youth team in 1984, and then the whole league went under. So it was disappointing. It was bad timing, really, on my part. There's nothing you can do about it. You just go from there, and luckily for me, we were in the midst of qualifying for the '86 World Cup, and I got picked up by the Canadian team as we were preparing for that. So I was busy from then until now, really, with the game. So it's been all right for me.
Now, a reminder, this is an audience participation show. The number's coming up at the bottom of your screen, and feel free to give us a call. Paul, your first international match was in, I believe, in a World Cup game against France in Mexico. That must have been a big thrill.
Oh, yeah, well, that was the biggest thrill. It was very early in my career. It was actually 1984 that I played against Cyprus when I was 18 in North Africa. That was my first game, but we qualified for the World Cup, and then in the first game that Canada played at the World Cup, I played against France, and that is the highlight, I would say, of any player's career, whether you lose 10-0 or as we did, we lost 1-0.
Close.
Yeah, we did very well, and I think we surprised a lot of people, and we thought we would build from there, and I guess we did in a way, but there were some setbacks after that. But hopefully 1998 we'll have a strong team and get back there.
Okay, we've got Peter on the line. Peter, come on in.
Peter? Are you there, Peter?
I guess Peter's gone.
We'll put Peter back on hold, let him think about it. Paul, you've been with the 86ers for quite some time now, and you were the team was virtually a powerhouse in the beginning. Coming into the APSL, would you say you've had to make a lot of adjustments? There's a lot stiffer competition, I know that.
Yeah, well, the first year we were in the APSL, we had all sorts of changes. We had about 4 or 5 coaches that year because Bobby was off the national team. We had Bruce Twomley at one point. John Catliffe even coached a couple of games. Carl Valentine. I can't even remember all the coaches we had. But we won the league somehow with about 100 different players, some going with the national team, some going overseas. We won the league, and then in the first round of the playoffs, we lost to Los Angeles in a shootout. But last year things just kind of fell apart for no particular reason. I guess there were some injuries. A lot of players left, went to Europe. That hurt us obviously, and it didn't go as well. But like I say, I think if we get a couple players here and there, that we should be all right for next year.
Okay, we've got Peter back. Peter, come on in.
Hi, good evening. Question for Paul. I'd like to ask him if his early days with the Whitecaps in the youth system, what kind of training program did they have in the NASL? What kind of support base do they have for people in Vancouver to get more established with the game, more coaching base, and how does he feel the system now to help people locally can be improved so they have a chance at the pros, at the pro level?
Well, back then we had some high-level coaches. We had Nobby Stiles, and he was with the 1966 England team. So that's the caliber of coaching you had. You had Dave Norman Sr. and a host of other coaches who you had a goal in sight. It was the North American Soccer League, so obviously it was very professional. It was full-time. They were paid, and the training you got either with the youth team or the reserve team or the first team was always top class. After the Whitecaps folded, it was the 86ers first team and the reserve team. Then we lost the reserve team, and it was difficult for us to be bringing players up. Basically, the farm system was UBC or the Premier League, which is a strong league, but there was no one organized body to bring the players to the professional level. So hopefully the 86er reserve team is back. Hopefully that will help out. And to be honest, I don't really know what else is going to be happening locally to provide more coaching for players who want to be professional overseas. I guess really them going overseas and playing with those teams is what will help in the long run.
Now, it looks like, oh, sorry, caller, was there another question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I was wondering, Paul, if you recommend the indoor game as really good training because of the faster pace?
Well, yeah, I played 1 year indoor, and It was a lot of fun. It was like hockey in a lot of ways. For a goalkeeper anyway, in that you're always involved in the game. They had power plays. You were looking through skates. Well, I was looking through runners, I guess it was. But it's very good, very demanding. You've got to be sharp throughout and very fit. So I found for myself that it did help with the reactions, everything close in. But really, it hurt in a few ways too, with long balls and crossing and shot stopping and a regulation-sized goal. I guess you're talking about the outfield players. Nick, you played in that futsal tournament too. I guess that that kind of helps.
It's the same thing. It helps in a close range, but once you get onto the big field, soccer's played on a 100-yard field, and instead of giving a guy a ball, a 50-yard ball to get into space, you start playing these little 5-yard passes and 2-yard passes, and it takes away from the game. So, it's okay. I like to do a little bit of both, a little bit indoor, then go to the outdoor game, just keep my skills sharp. But if you do too much of the indoor, it does take away from the outdoor game, definitely.
Anything else, caller?
Oh, that's great. I wish you guys both good luck, and hope you have a good year.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Alrighty, Nick, you've played overseas before. How would you contrast the style of play over there to North American style of play? Is there much of a difference?
Well, I mean, when you're going into the top divisions in Europe, there is. But I know a lot of people in Canada, they seem to knock down the game in our country, the APS and the CSL that it was. And playing in first division in the former Yugoslavia and Croatia, and as well playing second, third division, I don't think there's a huge difference between our game. I think the fitness level's up there with the European countries. The only thing that we don't have is what the Europeans have is from when you're 8 years old, you're taught to play the game, and they're taught at a high level. Mm-hmm. And that's what the kids here don't have. And I was fortunate to go there when I was 17, 18, and started a little bit late for them even there, but I caught on very quickly. But the game itself, I think the APSL has a lot to give, and I think people who come and watch it feel the same way.
What do you think hosting the World Cup in the United States is going to do for soccer and in North America in general? Do you think it's really going to raise the level of interest?
Well, during the World Cup, it was phenomenal. Everybody, all the Americans and Canadians, all they were talking about was the World Cup when they're glued to their TV sets. And everybody thought, okay, this new deal that was supposed to come out in Major League Soccer was going to be the final breakthrough to finally get soccer back on track as the NSL was in the old days. It just seems that every day after the World Cup, it just seemed to slip farther and farther back again. And I don't know if it's ever going to get there again. It's sad to say, but at this point in time, that MLS has taken a year's absence. They're actually going to start in 1996. So I hope that maybe that league finally, when it gets off the ground, it's going to bring soccer back up, not a level of baseball or hockey or basketball, but just below them, so we can at least ride on their coattails and get some sort of success off of that.
Okay, Bob's on line one. Go ahead, Bob.
Hi, this is for Nick. Nick, you faced European, South American, and Canadian strikers. Our knock in the past has always been that we can't score the goals when we have to. This one, what difference do you find? Is there a real difference in the skill level between, say, European strikers and Canadian, or is it just their method of play, they just get better opportunities?
I think with the Canadian strikers, we play more in the APSL. There's more of a sort of an English mentality of the British football, where it's a long ball in that. Where the Central American players, they like to play in close range, and they're more of a skillful bunch of players. I mean, take a classic example, Alex Bunbury. He played in the CSL for 5 or 6 years, and he was known for missing chances 2 feet out of the net with no goalie. And people would actually laugh at it and say, who is this guy? Now he's been in Portugal for a year. He was voted the MVP of the Portuguese First Division, and he's playing against players like Caniggia, like Futre. These are world-class players, and actually Alex was ranked #1 in the whole country. And it just goes to show that if you are playing in a system where they allow you to play, where you can get the ball to feet and do your thing, it just goes to help you. But Alex, on the other hand, he was in West Ham for a year, I think it was, and he didn't do well there at all. So, I guess it all depends where you are again.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Bob sounds like he's got an English accent.
No, I'm not trying to cut down the English game. I'm just trying to say that's the difference.
Traditionally, that is their style, the long ball and the cross,
long ball
right?
and the cross, and that's the way they play. And I mean, I personally, when you watch Soccer Saturday on Saturday, it's great because it's always in the box, and it's entertaining soccer to watch and they do what they do well, and it's entertaining. Where if you watch 2 South American teams playing on a Saturday morning, by the time they get the ball from the keeper up to the other, half an hour can pass by. You can have like a coffee and a sandwich, and go do your thing, and they won't even get the ball. It all depends what you enjoy to watch better.
I think we've got another call on the line. Harvey, come on in.
How you doing?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Not bad. I got a couple of questions. The first one is for your guest. I forget his name. The guy in
Nick.
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 Nick, what do you think about the way we're training young soccer players in the province, and in fact, in maybe even in North America? I mean, one of the things that I think would be really good for soccer in this on this continent is if we can produce superstar sort of caliber players that that fans can immediately identify with and that are world class in every sense. Now, what do you think the chances of there being a superstar, sort of a world superstar, being produced in North America?
At this point in time, it's going to be very rare because we haven't got the league to support that. You haven't got the infrastructure. You haven't got. If you've got, you can have the APSL now, but what do you have below that? You have basically your youth leagues and so forth, which aren't sponsored directly by the APSL team. So, I mean, at this point in time, for the Canes to have a superstar, the only way they're going to have that is if a kid is born here and he takes off when he's 10 years old or 12 and he gets his grooming in Europe or South America or wherever it happens to be, and then come back and he's a superstar. Other than that, it's going to be very difficult because we haven't got the coaching and right now at a youth level, I don't think.
So, I mean, if you, what would you recommend if you have, say, an 11 or 12-year-old kid who's got a lot of talent and if you think there is this possibility that this person could become a very good soccer player? I mean, what do you say to a kid like that? I mean, obviously you can't ship him off to Europe. I mean, what do you do?
I guess at this point in time where we are, the best thing for a kid that age is to get involved with the provincial program at this point in time, or play with their certain, whether it be the Surrey Selects or Vancouver, however it works, and play there till it gets to a certain age when you are 15, 16. And I mean, if you think the kid's going to be a great player, he's got to take that chance and go across and go where it happens to be. I mean, look at Craig Forrest. He left home at 16, and he's 26, 10 years later now. The guy's worth like whatever, $400,000 or $500,000 a year contract. So, but he made the decision to basically let school go in Canada and go for it, and it came out great.
Anything else, caller? Paul, you had a chance to play overseas in your younger days. Any regrets not staying over?
Absolutely none. It is for some people, as Nick has just brought up. Craig Forrest has done exceptionally well, and you look at the dollar figure and the amount of money he's making. I take my hat off to him because he went over at a young age, gave up some schooling, gave up a lot of social life, friends, what have you, and did well. After 10 years of playing, and he finally got in the first team after a number of years as well. It's hard. I was over at Sheffield Wednesday in Notts County, and basically what happened with me is I had troubles getting a work permit, and when I eventually did, an arrangement I had to get back to the first division fell through because a manager had changed, and I ended up stuck at Notts County. And I got an offer from the indoor Tacoma Stars to go there and try my luck. I really missed North America, and most players who do go to Europe, or especially England, find that the lifestyle is a lot different than it is back home. And if you consider where we are in Vancouver, and probably the nicest city, if not North America, in the world, then I'm lucky enough to have a job too where I'm working within the soccer industry with Umbro Canada. And if things work together and you enjoy your life and you can still play soccer, either with the 86 or the national team tied together, then I have no regrets at all. But on the other hand, I wouldn't say to someone that you shouldn't go overseas and try your luck, because you can see what happens. So we have two good examples of how it can work either way.
You guys, both of you guys have been all across Canada. Do you notice a difference in the level of enthusiasm among the fans, or fan support or interest from city to city? Where would you say it's greatest?
Probably for fan support at a professional level, I'd say Vancouver.
Really?
Playing in Montreal during the year, we didn't have very good support until we happened to make the finals. And as we made the finals, I think at the time the Montreal Canadiens were on strike, or locked out, and the baseball players were on strike, so there was nothing else in Montreal, and that's when we filled our stadium 8,000 plus. But before that, we didn't get any fans. But anytime you come into Vancouver, like I've never played for an 86er team, but I've always played against them. And every time I come into town, there's always a good 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. And they're and they love soccer. It doesn't matter if their team's winning or losing, but they just enjoy the sport.
How about Toronto? Hamilton, you played in Hamilton, Paul.
Yeah, well, in the CSL, I think Nick's right that Vancouver was the best supported all the time, most knowledgeable as well. At the Canadian level, we found that the last couple of times we've been in Edmonton, that we've had some terrific support there. Mind you, the teams we've played in the instances has created that. You'll find in some of the smaller places too, like when we were in Newfoundland, we qualified there for the '86 World Cup. They had a full house there of crazy fans too. So sometimes you find it's the smaller markets, but overall I think Vancouver, more so than Toronto and Montreal even, have the best supported crowds.
Well, guys, time has just flown by in this half hour as well, and I want to thank you guys both for coming on the air. Good luck, Paul, with the 86ers, and Nick, whatever you choose to do with your soccer season this year, good luck to you too.
Thank you.
Thank 86ers, Nick.
Yeah.
I hope so.
We'll see.
This is the time of the show. Steve Erickson and I usually like to go toe-to-toe on an issue, but you're a lot bigger than I am, so we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about an issue that we can both agree on, and why are the Canucks doing so bad this year?
Well, interestingly enough, I've had a chance to call Dan Russell on Sports Talk a couple times this year, and Dan slammed me both times, but I think maybe the Canucks, they're getting older and they're getting smaller. Maybe they need to make a few changes in the offseason. Maybe they should have made some changes. Dan brought up the point that that they're one goalpost away from the Stanley Cup. Well, the Kings were a year before, and they didn't even make the playoffs the year after. Pittsburgh went all the way to the Stanley Cup. They won, and they got rid of Recchi. They brought in Tocchet. They got rid of Paul Coffey, and they went and won a game. What do you think, Ian?
Well, they're talking trade already. I think it's a little too early to push the panic button yet. Pavel Bure's missed the last couple of games with the flu. The whole team, Jeff Brown had the flu against the game against San Jose. I think it's a little too early to push the panic button yet. There's been rumblings about maybe the coaching change. A lot of the players aren't maybe warming to Rick Lee as management would have liked, but although a short season, if they don't turn it around soon.
Well, yeah. I think you're right. I think it's a little too early to push the panic button maybe yet. Did you see the game against Winnipeg the other day?
Yes, I did.
Best game they played in 2 years. I don't support brawling. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I really thought that was the best game when guys like Pekka are out there hitting, and I was really impressed with them that game. And they're on a 2-game unbeaten streak. Not a lot, but it's good. Better than losing.
Although competition hasn't been the best the last 2 games, but at least it's something to build on. Day after tomorrow, it's a big day, guys. Valentine's Day. Our producer, Waldy Wild, went out to a concert at the Commodore last Saturday and brought back this message.
Hi, I'm Les McKeown from the 70s Bay City Rollers.
Hello, I'm Kevin. Hi, I'm Russell. And I'm Terry. And I'm John.
And we'd like to say Happy Valentine's Day to the viewers
of the locker room, then. The room.
Who are those guys?
The Rolling Stones? That looked like Mick Jagger on the end there. I don't know who the rest of
them. I think Wally said it was the Bay City Rollers.
Remember
the Bay City Rollers?
It's before my time, Ian.
Yeah, almost before my time, too. Our producer, Waldy, also wanted to send some Valentine's greetings out to some friends. And I bet you I have lost it.
See, that's why I like being single. I don't have to worry about all this.
Dottie, Bruce, and Stacy, happy Valentine's Day, and happy Valentine's Day to 3 women in my life, Colleen, Laura, and Jenna.
3 women?
That's my wife and 2 daughters, okay?
All right, I'll say happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there.
How about you guys? Any special Valentine wishes?
Are you saying it to everybody? Or
well, all the women out there.
Okay. Yeah, I'll say it to my wife, Pamela.
Okay.
To my wife, Angela.
Okay. Well, our next show is going to be February the 26th, and we're going to have the coach for the women's ski team on our show on the 26th of February. Hopefully, I don't know if I want to say hopefully or not, Steve Erickson will be back, and we'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's our show for tonight. Good night from everyone at Locker Room. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Good night.